Let me tell you a story that still haunts me, even now, years later. It was my wedding day, the kind of picture-perfect event you'd see in magazines. White tints billowing in the gentle breeze, crystal glasses clinking under chandeliers, and laughter echoing through the grand ballroom of the upscale venue my fiancé's family had insisted on booking. I stood there in my tailored tuxedo, feeling like I'd finally made it. After years of scraping by, building my career from nothing, I was marrying Elena, the love of my life, daughter of a prominent businessman. But as I rose to give my speech, microphone in hand, my eyes locked on my father, sitting quietly in the front row. He looked small, unassuming, in his worn suit and that old straw hat he always wore, like he didn't belong among the polished guests. And in that moment, all the resentment I'd buried for years bubbled up. I cleared my throat, and with a smile that masked my bitterness, I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, before we celebrate, I have to address something. My father, he doesn't deserve to sit here." The room erupted in awkward laughter, thinking it was a joke. But I wasn't joking. I saw his face crumple, his eyes dim with pain, and my heart twisted, but I pushed on. Little did I know, that single sentence would unravel everything I thought I knew about him, and the truth that followed would shake the entire room to its core. To understand why I said those words, I have to take you back to where it all started. My name is Alex, and I grew up in a small, dusty town on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona. My mother died when I was just 5, leaving my father, Victor, to raise me alone. He was a quiet man, always tinkering in his garage with odd inventions that never amounted to anything. We'd move from one rundown apartment to another, chasing jobs that paid just enough to keep the lights on. Dad worked as a mechanic, or so he said. This is not just another video. It's my life, my pain, and my truth. Please stay with me till the end. And if you feel my story touch your heart, support our channel with a like, a share, and a subscription. But half the time, he was between gigs, as he put it. I'd come home from school to find him staring out the window, lost in thought, his hands calloused but his eyes distant, like he was remembering a life he'd left behind. As a kid, I idolized him. He'd tell me stories under the stars, tales of adventure, far-off lands, and hidden treasures. One day, Alex, he'd say, "You'll understand why we live like this. It's all part of a bigger plan." But as I got older, those stories felt like excuses. Why couldn't we have a normal life? Why did I have to wear hand-me-downs while my classmates went on vacations? In high school, I started pulling away. I'd work after-school jobs, saving every penny, determined not to end up like him. "You're wasting your potential, Dad," I'd snap during our arguments. "We could have more if you just try harder." He'd just smile sadly and say, "Success isn't always what it seems, son." By the time I left for college on a scholarship, our relationship was strained. I majored in business, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a tech firm in San Francisco. That's where I met Elena. She was everything I aspired to. Confident, from a wealthy family, with a father who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Mr. Harrington was the kind of man who commanded rooms, always in sharp suits, sealing deals with a handshake. When I proposed to Elena, he pulled me aside and said, "Alex, you're a good man, but make sure your family fits in." I knew what he meant. My father was the outlier, the embarrassment I couldn't hide. Planning the wedding only amplified my frustrations. Elena's family covered most of the costs. The venue, the flowers, the catering. When I asked Dad if he could contribute, even something small like the rehearsal dinner, he hesitated. "I wish I could, Alex, but things are tight." Tight? They were always tight. I exploded over the phone. "You've never been there for me." "Not really." "And now, on the biggest day of my life, you can't even show up with more than that stupid hat." He went silent, and I hung up, fuming. In my mind, he represented everything I'd overcome: poverty, excuses, failure. I decided then that at the wedding, I'd make a point. Not to hurt him, I told myself, but to honor the life I'd built without him. The day arrived like a dream. The ceremony was flawless, Elena radiant in her gown, vows exchanged with tears and applause. As we moved to the reception, the air buzzed with excitement. Guests mingled, toasting to our future. My best man gave a heartfelt speech. Elena's maid of honor shared funny anecdotes. Then it was my turn. I stood, heart pounding, scanning the crowd. There was Dad, front and center, as I'd insisted, out of obligation, not affection. He smiled up at me, proud, oblivious. That's when I said it. My father doesn't deserve to sit here. I paused for effect, letting the words hang. Because after all he's done, or rather, hasn't done, he should be standing up here with me. But he never earned it. The laughter started tentative, then grew. People thought it was banter or roast. But Dad's face, God, I'll never forget it. His shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a hurt so deep it pierced me. For a split second, I regretted it. But I pushed through, raising my glass. To new beginnings, without the baggage of the past. The applause was polite, but the mood shifted. Elena squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Alex, that was harsh." I shrugged it off, but inside doubt crept in. Had I gone too far? As the band started playing, I noticed Mr. Harrington, Elena's father, staring intently at Dad. He was across the table, his brow furrowed. Then, slowly, he stood up, buttoning his jacket. The room quieted a bit as he walked over to Dad, leaned down, and whispered something. I strained to hear, but caught only fragments. "Sir, is that really you?" Dad's eyes widened, and he nodded faintly. Mr. Harrington's face paled, then broke into a disbelieving smile. "Everyone," he announced, his voice booming. "You have no idea who this man is." The whisper that changed everything. The room fell into a hush as Mr. Harrington's words echoed. I froze, champagne flute midway to my lips. What was happening? My father-in-law, always composed, looked like he'd seen a ghost. He turned to the crowd, his hand on Dad's shoulder. "This man, Victor, isn't just Alex's father. He's a legend." Murmurs rippled through the guests. Dad shifted uncomfortably, trying to wave it off, but Mr. Harrington wouldn't let go. "Let me explain," he said, signaling the band to stop. Elena glanced at me, confused, as I felt the ground shift beneath me. It all started unraveling from there. Mr. Harrington pulled out his phone, fumbling with it before projecting an old news article onto the venue screen. The headline read, "Billionaire philanthropist Victor Langdon disappears after donating fortune." The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. My father, younger, clean-shaven in a suit, standing beside world leaders at a charity gala. Gasps filled the room. I stared, mouth agape. That couldn't be him. My dad was Victor Ramirez, the mechanic, not some tycoon named Langdon. 30 years ago, Mr. Harrington began, his voice steady but awed. Victor Langdon was one of the wealthiest men in America. He built an empire in real estate and tech, amassing billions. But he wasn't like the others. He gave it all away. Hospitals, schools, orphanages. He funded them anonymously at first. But when his identity leaked, the media hounded him. Then, one day, he vanished. Rumors said he died in a plane crash. Others claimed he went into hiding. But here he is, alive at my daughter's wedding. Dad sighed, removing his hat, revealing the same distinguished features from the photo. "It's true," he admitted softly, his voice carrying over the speakers as someone handed him a mic. "But it's not the whole story." The crowd leaned in, captivated. I felt like I was in a dream or a nightmare. All those years of resentment. And he'd been hiding this? Flashback to my childhood, but now through this new lens. Dad hadn't been lazy. He'd been deliberate. After Mom's death, from a rare disease that no local hospital could treat, he'd vowed to change the world. "I had the money," he explained to the room, "but I saw how it corrupted people. I wanted you, Alex, to grow up normal, to earn your way, not inherit a poison chalice." He'd faked his disappearance, changed his name, and moved us to obscurity. The inventions in the garage, blueprints for charitable projects, the tight finances, self-imposed, to teach me humility. Mr. Harrington chimed in, explaining how he'd recognized Dad. "Years ago, Victor saved my company from bankruptcy with an anonymous investment. I met him once, briefly, at a fundraiser. That hat. He wore it then, too, as a disguise. When Alex made that toast, I looked closer, and it hit me. He turned to Dad. You've been living like this all this time. As Dad spoke, memories flooded me. The times he'd disappear for jobs, actually overseeing his foundations. The letters he'd write late at night to beneficiaries around the world. I'd accused him of neglect, but he'd been protecting me from the spotlight's dangers. Paparazzi, opportunists, even threats from those he'd outmaneuvered in business. The guests were riveted. Some pulled out phones, searching his name, whispering excitedly. Elena's mother dabbed her eyes, moved by the revelation. But I sat there numb. My toast now felt like a dagger I'd plunged into my own chest. How could I have been so blind? Dad continued, detailing his past. Orphaned young, building his fortune from nothing, then realizing wealth's emptiness after Mom's death. I gave it all away, he said, except a trust for emergencies. I wanted Alex to forge his own path. The room applauded, but I couldn't join. Shame burned in my veins. Elena squeezed my hand. Alex talked to him. But before I could, Dad looked at me, his eyes soft. Son, I never told you because I feared this exact moment. But your words, they hurt because they're partly true. I wasn't there the way you needed. I was trying to be a hero to the world, but failed as a father. Tears stung my eyes. The wedding, meant to be my triumph, had become a stage for my ignorance. Guests approached Dad, shaking his hand, sharing stories of how his donations had touched their lives. One woman's child saved by a hospital he funded, another's education paid for. Mr. Harrington proposed a toast. To Victor Langdon, the man who gave everything. Cheers erupted, but I slipped away to the balcony, needing air. Outside, the night air cooled my flushed face. How had I misjudged him so badly? Flashbacks hit. Christmases with secondhand toys, while he secretly gifted millions. My college tuition, scholarship, he'd said, but now I wondered. Elena found me, wrapping her arms around me. It's okay, Alex. This is a gift, a second chance. But as the party continued inside, I knew the real truth was just beginning to unfold. There was more to Dad's story, layers I hadn't imagined, and the night was far from over. Layers of deception and discovery. Back inside, the atmosphere had transformed. What was once a standard wedding reception now felt like a revelation party. Guests clustered around Dad, peppering him with questions. Why hide for so long? One asked. Was it hard living modestly? Another chimed in. Dad handled it gracefully, his voice steady, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. The weight of a secret finally lifted, yet not without cost. I approached him hesitantly, the crowd parting like I was an intruder in my own story. Dad, I started, my voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me? He pulled me into a hug, the first real one in years. Alex, I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I had. Money changes people. I saw it happen to friends, family. After your mother died, I couldn't risk losing you to that world. As we sat at a quiet table, he delved deeper into his past, painting a picture I'd never seen. Born in poverty, he'd hustled his way up, starting with a small real estate flip that snowballed into an empire. By 30, he was a billionaire, rubbing shoulders with elites. But success came with shadows, betrayals, lawsuits, a marriage strained by constant travel. Mom had been his anchor, but her illness exposed the system's flaws. No amount of money could buy the specialized care she needed in time. That's when I started giving, he said. First, a wing in her name at the hospital. Then more. But the more I gave, the more I realized I didn't need the rest. The disappearance? Meticulously planned. He liquidated assets, funneled funds into trusts managed by discreet lawyers, and staged a crash over the ocean. No bodies, just speculation. I took you, changed our names, and started over, he explained. It was lonely, but worth it. Watching you grow strong, independent. That was my real fortune. Mr. Harrington joined us, adding his piece. Victor invested in my fledgling hotel chain anonymously. Without that, I'd be bankrupt. I owed him everything, but he vanished before I could thank him. Other guests shared similar tales. A charity that saved a community center, scholarships for underprivileged kids. One man, a doctor, revealed, your father's donation built a research lab, where we develop treatments for diseases like your mother's. He saved thousands, but as the stories flowed, cracks appeared in my understanding. Why the total secrecy? Why not hint at it? Dad admitted the risks, old enemies, tax hawks, even kidnappers targeting rich families. He'd lived in fear, always looking over his shoulder. That explained the moves, the paranoia I'd mistaken for laziness. Elena listened intently, her hand in mine. This explains so much, she whispered. Your drive, Alex, it's from him. But guilt gnawed at me. My toast replayed in my head, each word a regret. How many times had I called him a failure? Dismissed his advice? The night deepened with more revelations. Dad pulled out a worn envelope from his pocket, documents proving his identity, including a trust fund in my name, untouched. It's yours now, he said, but use it wisely. Wealth is a tool, not a crutch. I stared at the figures, enough to change lives, including mine. But it felt tainted by my actions. As the band resumed, couples danced, but the energy was electric with whispers. Some guests live-tweeted the drama. Hashtags like #WeddingRevelation trending. Reporters might show up soon, Dad warned. This could blow up. Indeed, phones buzzed with news alerts. Missing billionaire found at son's wedding. I stepped away again, processing. Flashbacks to pivotal moments. Dad teaching me to fix cars. Not for the job, but for self-reliance. His stories of adventure? Veiled truths from his tycoon days. Negotiating deals in exotic locales. I'd built my career emulating what I thought he'd lacked. But it was his influence all along. Mr. Harrington pulled Dad aside for a private chat, emerging with a proposal. Partner on new foundation. Dad smiled genuinely for the first time that night. Maybe it's time to come out of hiding. Elena and I danced, her head on my shoulder. Forgive yourself, Alex. This is a beginning. But as the clock ticked toward midnight, I sensed unfinished business. Dad's eyes held more secrets, perhaps about Mom, or why he'd chosen this exact moment to let the truth emerge. The truth had shaken everyone, but for me, the real earthquake was internal. Reconciliation and new horizons. As the reception wound down, the weight of the evening settled like fog. Guests departed with hugs and astonished goodbyes, many pressing business cards into Dad's hand. Call me, they said. We could do great things. Elena's family enveloped him like long-lost kin, her mother tearfully thanking him for blessing our union with such a miracle. I found Dad alone on the terrace, staring at the stars, hat in hand. Son, he said as I approached, we need to talk, really talk. We sat on a bench, the city lights twinkling below. For hours, we unpacked the years, my resentments, his choices. I wasn't perfect, he confessed. Hiding meant missing parts of your life. Birthdays, graduations, I was there in spirit, but not enough. I admitted my faults. I was angry at the world, but took it out on you. That toast. I'm so sorry. Tears flowed freely, bridging the chasm. He revealed more. The trust wasn't just money. It included letters from Mom, written before her death, urging him to raise Alex to be kind, not rich. She knew the dangers, he said. We agreed on this path. It humanized him. Not a flawless hero, but a grieving man doing his best. By dawn, as the venue cleared, we hugged fiercely. I love you, Dad, Victor, whoever you are. He chuckled. Just Dad. Elena joined us, and we shared a family moment, the first of many. In the weeks that followed, life exploded. Media swarmed. Interviews, headlines like Billionaire's secret life exposed at wedding. Dad handled it with poise, announcing his return with new initiatives, affordable housing, education reforms. I quit my job to join him, blending my tech savvy with his vision. The trust fund? We used it to start a foundation in Mom's name. Our relationship bloomed. Dad moved in temporarily, sharing stories unfiltered. Wild business escapades, close calls during his disappearance. I saw the adventurer in him, the man behind the myth. Elena and I honeymooned with him along, turning it into a family adventure. Years later, as I tell this story, I wear his old hat sometimes, a reminder. That wedding toast, meant to wound, instead healed us. It taught me, judge less, listen more. Success isn't wealth, it's connection. The truth shook everyone, but it rebuilt me. And Dad, he's thriving, still giving, but now with family by his side. If you're reading this, remember, behind every failure might be a hidden hero. Cherish them before it's too late.